Well, hi, and welcome back. This is Greg Lull. I am your host for Unleashed with Brian Collins, and that is Brian Collins. And this is my podcast voice, which I'll lose right now because Brian, wasn't impressed. It takes a lot to impress Brian. So we're going to try to impress you today by talking about something that is kind of in the culture now, since as our producer, our what's the word I use to describe
Intrepid.
you? Intrepid producer Chris Judson said, dates back to about 2022, and that is two letters. Can you guess them? Oh wait, they can't. We can't hear what they're saying, right? No. AI. So we're going to talk about that, but we're not going to talk about it before Chris rolls the music. I can't wait for this. This is like the highlight of the episode for me. And I was against it originally. Seriously? Did you just open the window and we're hearing the wind and the birds? Here we go.
That's all you get.
Wow. I am underwhelmed. Thank you for that, Chris. Okay. AI. AI, of course, is an acronym which stands for Artificial Intelligence. Goes back a few years now. There's a little bit of a history, and we thought it'd be good to talk about what it is, how it. What was that? How?
No, that was me.
Oh, that was you? Oh, we could be the music on an episode. Anyway, what it is, how it's used, and who better, Brian, to answer the question, what is AI, than our mutual friend, Chat GPT,
Oh, you asked it.
who is a chat bot, one of many. And I asked the question, what is AI? And this is what ChatGPT said. AI means computers that can learn, think, or make decisions in ways that are similar to humans. Some everyday technologies that use AI include Siri, or the Google Assistant, or what's that other one? Alexa. Recommended systems on YouTube and Netflix, self-driving technology like Tesla, and chatbots like ChatGPT. Just this little bit more. People build AI systems by combining data, algorithms, which is something somebody smarter than me would have to describe. That would be Brian or Chris, and computing power. So those are the three ingredients. And here's the way my simple mind thinks about that. I think about it like wood stove heat. My mother-in-law, who lives downstairs from us, has a wood stove. It's always cozy. What makes that work? Wood, a wood stove, and someone to ignite the wood so that it burns. So there's a lot behind it. There's a lot behind AI. And Brian, why don't you tell me, out of all the ways we could approach this huge subject, what is the single most significant question, do you think, we should be kicking it off with?
Well, I mean, kind of why we end up talking about it on the podcast is because of the so-called teleological questions.
All right.
And I know
All
you
right.
I know you don't
the
like
word.
it when I
The
don't
word, no,
use
teleological.
the word ology. So teleology, telos means end or completion. And so teleological questions are what is the cause and where is it going? And so and human beings are always asking teleological questions of, why am I here? What is my purpose? And the Bible, whatever else it is, does indeed answer those teleological questions. Unlike evolution, even the most well, I have to be careful to distinguish between real science and popularizers, but the evolution in and of itself is not a teleological answer, because evolution, it being blind, it doesn't produce anything. And so at least the way that Darwin originally formulated it. And so, like, you have change, and then species either live or die, and then they're either successful or they're not. But the problem is that evolution, as in the popularizer mind, it's replaced God, and it has purposes, but nothing can have purposes unless it has a mind. And so that's one of the things that C.S. Lewis points out is that, like, true naturalism is fundamentally teleological. But there
you mean the fundamentalist tradition in religion?
In naturalism. Not in religion.
So what is fundamentalism in?
I didn't say fundamental. I said the fundamental part of scientific evolution, as opposed to popular evolution or developmentalism, which is everything is getting better. Evil is developing into good. And so Lewis had a lot to say about the everything is improving or everything is turning into something else.
Okay.
So
turn it back to, if there's a teleological question, which
so,
is the important
I would
one,
say
what is
that,
the question?
I would say there's probably about half a dozen questions, but probably the one that you brought up, Greg, is AI a return to Babel? So in other words, like, is AI man seeking to become God, which is fundamentally what the sin of Babel as presented in Genesis 9. And I would say yes for some people. And so I watched a couple videos on this. Some of them were just from people explaining, one thing we need to be careful here is that, like, AI is a large class of different computers and different trainings doing different things. And so, but for the sake of simplicity, in most people's minds, we often think of the search algorithm type ones, of which OpenAI's ChatGPT is the most prolific. And so, but they all roughly work the same way, whereas there's a large amount of data on which the computer is trained, and then through a bunch of steps.
Who trains the computer?
Originally the people, I suppose.
Yeah. That's why it's called artificial intelligence.
The thing is that the name AI is a very old idea in the literature, and it's probably over 100 years old. But the idea of it really kind of dates back to Asimov, and I didn't look into who coined the term, but it's a very old idea of, like, is it possible for computers to mimic personality? And so the physicist, mathematician Alan Turing, who was behind I can't remember the name of the project, but it was at Bletchley Park, and they cracked the Enigma code, the Enigma machine, and so the Allies knew what the Germans were doing. But he did a lot for the theoretical side of how computers work. And so he came up with a model of a computer called the Turing machine. And any computer is equivalent to a Turing machine. And so he used this Turing machine to ask certain questions. And the most important, the real question that's germane for the field of AI is, can you construct a test that will tell if it's a human or a computer or bot or whatever you want to call it. And we call that the Turing test. And so when something is called Turing complete, it means that said object has passed a particular Turing test.
What was that test or that competition several years ago with, was it
I don't know what you're talking about.
Apple?
There's been so many different types
There's an
of
Apple
tests.
computer that they were debating or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. So there's been so many different ones. The biggest one, or in my opinion, the first triumph of computers over people was the chess. The chess one, and it was called Big Blue, which is one of IBM's nicknames, and it was an IBM computer, and it beat Gary Kasparov, I think his name is, the Russian grandmaster, and that was in 1997.
But did it really beat him? It's a computer.
Well, so this is you're trying to get to the
teleological.
You're
question.
getting to the teleological question, and like I'm still trying to set the stage here.
Okay.
So and then later, sometime in the 2010s, they had I just don't remember its name, but Watson, because it was named for one of the founders of IBM, and it was able to beat players at Jeopardy.
That's what I was thinking of.
Oh,
yeah.
Is that what you were thinking of?
That's what I was thinking.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So Alex Trebek was still around, and I watched the whole documentary on it, and originally they actually set up a little studio at wherever their research was, and they had someone playing Alex Trebek, playing the host, and then they had people playing in, and then eventually they were able to train it, and it actually went on the show, and it actually beat all the people, and so
but did it really?
well, right.
beat
So
them?
that's kind of the crux of the question. And my personal opinion is no. But we do have to change, like so for example, because the chess one is so old, that was in 97. So that's nearly 30 years ago. And so when I was in school, the guy that in grad school, the guy that I worked for, doing research, his son was 14 at the time, and he was already doing extremely well in chess, and he was playing at the adult level, and so he was playing other adults. And so chess, the way it works is that there's literally billions of combinations of games, and so the greatest computer, at least according to current technology, can only predict 20 or 30 moves ahead, and a really good person could maybe predict 5 moves ahead. And because it was shown that computers can beat people, well, then that sort of ceases to be interesting in one sense, because again, like if the computer is going to beat you, like it's kind of irrelevant and sort of inevitable. And so it was just sort of a like, can we do it from an engineering perspective? And so now what they use computers for is to train people, like, because one of the things that my boss's son was up against is that, like, at the highest level, people are videotaping you and watching you play so that they know your style. So it's advantageous to not ever play in public because you don't want too many people learning your style. So you need an opponent that isn't going to play against, to which is not going to give away your style and is going to be different every time. So in other words, I believe probably if you were to ask most people in the chess world, like, and another thing is one of my friends I haven't seen in a little while. He didn't get into chess until maybe 10 years ago, and it doesn't seem to bother him at all that computers can beat chess. He still finds it interesting and exciting. So the question is, like, I think like, just because a computer can beat us at chess doesn't mean that we're going to give up playing chess. And even the Grandmaster, Garry Kasparov, as far as I know, he didn't say, I'm going to stop playing chess because a computer can beat me, which I think that ought to be sort of a roadmap for how do we answer these kinds of questions of, like, because I acknowledge that at the end of the day, a computer playing chess doesn't really have life-shattering implications. I think maybe it does. Maybe that was the sort of the first barrier of, like, human beings are special. Nothing else can play chess, so far as we know. Like, because checkers was almost immediate. That was in the 60s.
It's still very cool, very interesting that you can pick up your phone and say something like, is there a podcast called Unleashed with Brian Collins? It says no. See, that's proof. That's proof that AI is artificial intelligence. Because if you hover over that competition with the chess or Watson, if you hover over up here, you look down and you realize, oh, wait a minute. The people that really beat Kasparov, or whatever his name was, were the millions of really intelligent people whose data was gathered and packaged in the computer with an algorithm to be able to
You need me to
beat.
tell you what an algorithm is?
No, I'm just using the word. Yeah, we got to get past the moment, but that's true. You keep saying the computer beat so and so, or the
I'm using that as a shorthand, right?
Well, all right, but the longhand, I think that's important to realize throughout this whole discussion, is that millions of people, the wisdom of millions of real people, real intelligence, has been packaged brilliantly by people in the form of algorithms that go through a computer and come out with amazing rapidity. There's a word for you, Brian. Rapidity. 3 seconds. It took me 3 seconds to generate this.
How about celerity?
What?
Celerity.
That's good. That's good. Anyway.
You know what celerity means?
No, I have no idea.
The same thing as rapid.
Oh, all right.
Acceleration.
I choose to use rapidity. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, that was where I was going to go anyway. So it's good that we're on the same page. Is that
Wow.
like...
I'm not sure that's good.
Well, I mean, I've had these kinds of questions, and they're generally, in my mind, they're sort of put in the category of apocalyptic or apocalypticism, because that's usually where the people that I'm talking to, which in general are in my family, are coming from. They've watched something by David Jeremiah, with all due respect, and like he has said, this is the beast, right? And so the problem is that in the same way that everybody, well, most people look at the predictions of the rapture and just kind of laugh, like because every single one of them have been wrong. What we ought to also do is look at the predictions of this is the beast and equally laugh in one sense. And I can give a litany of examples of things that have happened either just a little bit before
The
my
beast. What are you talking about when you're talking about the beast?
well, I don't know where in Revelation it is. I had to explain what I meant to a teenager this morning, but in Revelation, like we have this unholy trinity of people, and the most famous part of which is the number of the beast. It is the number of a
Six.
number of a
Six.
man, and you should count it or reckon it or figure it out. It's a little bit difficult to translate it correctly, but the ancient Christians, like, they most certainly thought it referred to Caesar Nero because they had two different numbers that they got. They got 616. You'll find that in some of the manuscripts, and then you in some of the manuscripts you find 666. So
Stop doing that. Chris, how can we make him stop doing that? You're the producer. Cut his mic for a while. That will. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Mike is actually cut now.
Is it really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
He is.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm not prepared to carry on. So, unmute his mic.
Anyway, the point is that this sort of searching for the end of the world is perennial, and there may be behind it something good, which is this world is groaning with I forget how Paul says it, but like the world is groaning for an expectation or something. So it may be that people are looking for signs, but I think for most people, it's more a kind of escapism, or at least that would be what I would realize, is that they get so focused on the end of the world that they forget to kind of take out the trash. So and that may be too harsh. I don't know, but I've seen it.
What do you think? What do you think the intentions or the motivations of the people who built the Tower of Babel were? I mean, we know.
Sure, but I'm not quite done.
No, that's a question I want you to answer.
Sure.
Just
So, like I said, so a little bit before I was born,
is this an answer to my question? Or
Let me finish.
We're going back. Go ahead.
Credit cards came out, and I'm told by people that certain sects of the Christian church just freaked out because it literally has numbers on it, and that was lauded or not lauded, but jeered as the end of the world. And so on the one hand, I don't know. I'm very cautious about, like, whenever the latest evil, or even if it is, or if it's touted as evil, I guess I should say that, comes out. There's a perennial thing in the human heart to say the end is nigh. So anyway, all right, I'll come back to this. So back
to my question.
Back to your question.
Yeah.
There's also a perennial thing in the human heart that's wicked. Like I think crying the end of the world is sort of neutral. Like this sort of Chicken Little thing, the sky is falling. Like I think it's a nuisance, but I don't know that it's wicked. I think it can become wicked when you tell people to sell all their stuff. like, and that certainly has happened. And Lewis actually names about a dozen that I've never heard of, and because they happen so often. In my own lifetime, the Boston Church of Christ posted all the signs, and it was going to be in '91 or something. But they were sort of vandalistic in as much as that every signpost over the entire New England was covered with little pictures of crosses with a parachute on them, and so I remember these as a kid. All right, so the Tower of Babel. So when you read Genesis 1 through 11,
Would you like me to read 2 verses?
let
from
me
Genesis
let me
chapter
set it
11?
up first.
Okay.
You have 3 different stories of rebellion. You have the rebellion in the Garden of Eden, where the serpent tempts Adam and Eve to disobey God, and I think there may be deeper things there, but at minimum, it's a test of obedience, and they fail the test, and so they get kicked out of the garden. The next one, a lot of evangelicals are extremely uncomfortable with, is the sons of God seeing the daughters of men are beautiful and procreating with them, and then I disagree very strongly with you on that point.
Shocking.
But in either case, the result of that is the flood. And then we have, after the flood, we have this incident in the plains of Shinar, which is the Bible's word for Sumer. So think southern Iraq. And they build this tower. And
Okay, good setup. Good setup. I will
all
now
right,
read.
you can read now.
Then they said, these are the builders. Then they said, "Come, let it." I'm gonna use a voice to help to get across the idea. Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. Is that helpful?
No.
Oh.
So one of the commands that God, no, he must have gave it to Adam and Eve, and I don't remember if it was, it must have been in the garden. But be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth. So God gives 3 commands to Adam and Eve, and so one of them was like be fruitful and fill the earth. In other words, don't all congregate in one place. So sin number 1, is the people gathered together in one place. And the other thing you see in the I think it's Genesis 5 where it talks about the descendants of Cain. You get this character Nimrod, and as far as we can tell, it means something like rebel. And what does he do? Well, he builds cities. So he's specifically countermanding God's idea to spread out and to fill the land. And he does all sorts of other things that are against God and his commandments. So anyway, so sin number 1 was sort of like we're in these cities, and then the other thing that we need to talk about is that like when we hear the word name like Greg, it doesn't really mean anything to us. But really what we ought to be thinking is like when I say the word Apple, most people are likely to think of the technology company before they're likely to think of the fruit that you eat. And so broadly speaking, that's much more of what the Hebrew concept is like, what does the thing represent, or what are the associations? And so marketers or people in advertisement, they call that branding. And so the idea is that, like, even if we, the individuals, die, our name, our reputation, our monument to our own greatness, that will last. And so, in other words, it's trying to get back to Eden, but on our own terms. And so as probably as long as people have existed, certainly the earliest recorded story of that type of rebellion is we're going to reach out for God and we're going to supplant him and take his place. And so that desire in the human heart has always been there. So I think many of the and this is one of the things that I watched on, like, our particular men, i.e., very wealthy men like Elon Musk. What is their goal here? And the people of the whatever of the podcast that I don't remember the name of, they were sort of asking the question, what did they get out of it? And so one of them, making a cryptic allusion, or maybe they were just using the phrase. They said, "Is their goal to be God Emperor?" And some of them thought that probable, which is really kind of the same thing of, like, we're reaching out. But that's still thinking purely in naturalistic terms. But some people are thinking in what modern philosophy calls transhumanism, which is really, I think, kind of the crux of what we're talking about, of reaching out, and all of us becoming God, humanity itself becoming God. And so C.S. Lewis talks about that in two of his books, The Abolition of Man, and then the which is a nonfiction book, and then a fiction book that plays out this is what it could look like of amoral scientists reaching for the man, homo deus, kind of thing. And so
What is that book?
sorry, the That Hideous Strength.
Oh, not The Last Battle.
No.
All right. So you've just a little pause, and we'll go on with it. But you categorize the Tower of Babel as one of three stories of rebellion in the Book of Genesis. So the question I was getting at was: is AI, or could AI, the development of AI, be an act of rebellion, which you were kind of starting to answer, I thought, with talking about Musk and others who are at the forefront of that. Is that is it really rebellion? Is that what they're trying to do?
Well, I mean, I don't know.
It's
Like I said,
plausible, right?
yeah, I mean, of course, but I don't know that any of them would be so brazen at this point to come out and say that. So
Well, and Elon Musk has warned of the dangers of AI.
Yeah,
so at
and
least he has some guardrails
well, and
in mind.
well, and they talked about him specifically because, and again, this is all secondhand, but I assume they watched actual interviews of him, and he was. These guys were saying, I stayed out of it for a long time, and I finally realized that I can either be a patient, or I can be part of it. And so he's like, well, I'd rather be a part of it and have some little control over it. And I don't even think he was saying that, like, I would necessarily have a good sort of control over it. But anyway, yeah. So I suspect that for many of the people at the top, their goal, besides making money, which is just another form, a different way of having certain types of control. I don't think I'm making some assumptions here. I don't think many of them would claim even to be deists or theists. So I think most of them would claim to be atheists or believe in materialism. So in their sense, that like, what difference does it make? And teleological questions are sort of irrelevant for a materialist because they sort of have no meaning. And so the best that, a materialist can do is just sort of like eat, drink, and be merry. Like, for tomorrow we die. Like, that's the best a materialist can ever hope for. And so like, and if one really buys into and believes that, like, you just live like hell, and then maybe you take care of your body so that you can live longer. But like, I think most of them would sort of profess to that kind of philosophy.
Well, it's impossible for us to get into the mind of Elon Musk or any of the others to answer the question I ask. Is what it was their intention. But the creature that they've developed, Grok.
Well, I don't.
ChatGPT.
This is where I disagree with you.
Well, I haven't even asked the question or made
Well,
the
you
statement
already.
yet.
I mean,
let me make the statement.
You played your hand
then
already.
You can disagree. Well, I haven't played it for our listeners.
No, but you did. You said creature.
Well, for lack of a better word, what do you want to call it?
Well, I think
computer.
I think tool is better.
Well, wow. Chris, is creature or tool? Rather than ask Chris that question, I want to repeat what Chris talked to us off air about, and that was, correct me if I'm wrong, but was it an organization, Christian organization, that created this? No, who was it? We don't know, but someone created this. I guess it was a chat bot called Jesus, and people would phone in or ask the question of this chatbot Jesus, and Jesus would answer the question. By the way, did they seem to? Do you know if they were reasonable, like biblical answers, or they were? And I've experienced the same thing asking ChatGPT questions about ministry, and the answers have been pretty spot on biblical. But so Chris's question to us was, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Which is not a teleological question, but
yes, it is.
Oh, all right, good. So we agree. Go ahead.
No, I agree. It's a teleological question.
But
no, but my whole contention here, of which Greg is disagreeing with me, is that I just think this is the latest and greatest tool, and a tool is amoral. In fact, like, it has no thoughts, it has no purposes, and which is different from a creature, which implies that it has some kind of sentient or purposiveness behind it. And so that is kind of the crux of the question of, like, and the early science fiction writers, what they were really asking with AI of, like, is it possible for us to create a creature, not merely something that appears to be a creature? And that's the entire crux of the question. And so that's why I'm disagreeing with you. And so I don't know whether it's possible or not for man to create a creature or not, but thus far as I can tell, we haven't. And like, the reason I keep harping on doomsday is because Lewis wrote an essay in the late 50s about how people were protesting and wouldn't even get out of bed because they were so afraid of the atomic bomb. And so he wrote an essay called "What Are We to Do About the Bomb?" And it's kind of long. It's half an hour long. Sorry, Greg. it's a half an hour long, and his sort of thesis is, well, we were all going to die anyway. Like, so like if we lived in medieval England, what are we to do about the plague? You know what I mean? Well, the same thing that people have done for hundreds of years. They got up and they did their jobs, and they didn't spend their time paralyzed by fear. And so that's sort of what my question to people is, and I saw it in my own lifetime with COVID, of like, people were so afraid of COVID, they wouldn't leave the house for months. And these are otherwise non-agoric, non-hypochondriac people. And it was so bizarre to me, because I'm someone who is paralyzed by fear of what people think of me, but I've never been paralyzed by fear of death. Or that kind of fear. So I just couldn't. I mean, I could relate and be kind to them, in a way that they most certainly were never kind to me, in my depression, because it's the same type of people that would say, "Well, you should have prayed about it," and I, thank God, never told them, "Well, you should pray about it." But anyway. Like I said, I've seen this same kind of like being paralyzed by fear of like, is this the end of the world? Is this the apocalypse? And it doesn't say in Revelation, like, when man creates something in his own image, that thing takes over, like that'll be the end. You know what I mean? And so I feel like that's really what's at the back of everybody's mind. And like I said, I'm undecided on whether such a thing is possible.
Okay, it's pause right there, because we're going to invite a guest into our podcast. We've never done this before. Elon Musk himself is here. And Elon, thanks so much for joining us through CNN. And this is what Elon has said. This goes back to 2024. AI is more dangerous than, say, mismanaged aircraft design or production maintenance or bad car production, in the sense that it has the potential, however small one may regard that probability, but it is not non-trivial. It has the potential of civilizational destruction. And he goes on, just one more sentence. It's actually not a quote. He has repeatedly warned recently of the dangers of AI, and so on, so on. So anyway, civilizational destruction, and he separates it. He's one of the founders of AI.
Yeah, no, but this is exactly what my entire point is. We've had civilization destruction since day one.
And you said you don't know whether this.
No. I didn't say I don't know whether this is a civilization destruction. I said I don't know if it's true AI.
If what's true AI?
If ChatGPT is true AI, where true AI is the idea that man really has created a new species. But you're not interested in that question, so.
Well, I am, and the answer is yes. Man, millions and millions of men, controlled by scientists and computer experts, have created, call it a creature, call it a platform, but they have created something that resembles to me.
No, but that's the whole thing. I think it's an illusion.
Continue.
I am extremely tempted to just say, "Okay, boomer."
Go ahead.
Do you?
That may be an illusion that I just went woo right over my head. You're not talking about Boomer Esiason. Because I would take strong exception.
I don't know who that is.
Boomer Esiason is a quarterback for the. I think he was the Giants. So,
okay.
So Boomer. Now it's your turn.
Do you really not know what I'm talking about?
No.
So people of my generation and younger have developed the varying levels of disrespect of referring to baby boomers as boomers,
Okay.
especially when it's something on which the young people actually know something about, and the baby boomers think they do, but they don't.
They know just enough to be dangerous.
Well, and probably not even that much. And so,
Okay, Brian.
and so that kind of thing is perennial, and I guess it's not purely hypothetical for me because I encounter it.
Is Elon a boomer? No, he's not.
No.
He's also extremely intelligent.
Right, and so like I said, there are some people that are baby boomers that actually know something about technology. I do not include you among them.
Good.
So my difficulty is that, like, we're a society of sound bites, and so if Fox News tells people something, or if CNN tells them something, it doesn't matter.
Well, this was a quote from Elon Musk.
No, I know that,
and
but
I've heard the larger portions of interviews with him.
I know, but my point is that is still the opinion of one man. So
Sure.
and so I'm not saying that Elon didn't say that, and I'm not claiming that in this particular case the news media blew it out of proportion. But in general, I am saying that. And so the difficulty that I'm having is that, like, a famous among physicists, Richard Feynman, he won the Nobel Prize in the 60s for some work that he did as a student. And the reporter asked him, like, "Oh, Dr. Feynman, can you explain in 5 minutes what you won the Nobel Prize for?" And he said no. And what he meant by that is that you really need to know the subject of theoretical physics in order to even begin to discuss with any meaning what it is that he contributed uniquely to the word. So in other words, you lack the necessary background of years and years of study of advanced mathematics and physics to understand what's going on. And so I'm not saying so that's sort of where my frustration is coming from is that in general people will hear a soundbite and then they will react emotionally to it instead of, like, being a little bit more calm and, like, facing each thing as it comes. And so, like I said, I'm approaching this question a little bit historically in terms of the science fiction writers, and I think most of them wanted true AI. And if you watched The Matrix, that was something that humanity had achieved in the movie. And in the movie, the AI then took over and made humanity their literal slaves by turning them into batteries. So this idea of, if we create something and then it will enslave us, well, that's nothing new in the literature or in anything else. I mean, you think about, like, we have all our technology. I just think we're already a slave to things. It's just we give our assent to them.
What do you think God?
Anyway,
What do you think God meant when He said, after the verses I read, their intention, the Lord came down to see the city, back at the Babel story. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower, and the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language, and this is only the beginning of what they'll do, and nothing that they propose will do will now be impossible for them."
right. So, I mean, people can disagree with me, but I think it's meant ironically from God's perspective. Like if God is truly all powerful,
Yeah.
like and one of the things we forget the immediate context before is he literally just wiped out the entire humanity
Yeah,
with the
right,
flood.
right.
So like it's not impossible that he wiped them out. Never mind the fact that like we we've come up with doctrines of like God being all powerful. Like if you could speak the universe into existence, like you obviously like are a lot more powerful than these people putting mud bricks and
So he clearly was not threatened by these little builders. So what was his concern?
well, I think it was for them.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you have deified yourself so much that you want to be God. You want to create in the way that God does. So
And it was the same seed that Satan put into the mind of
yeah,
Eve. Right?
100%. And that's
Garden of
and so again, my contention is this is not new. This is as old as humanity, of like us trying to be God. Like, and again, there is a sense that God calls us to be him, but in a way that he's prescribed, not the way that we. And so like he wants us to be like him in as
Like
much
him, yeah.
well, and but we're also in his image. And so he wants us to be like him in as much as have a relationship with him. And one of the things that we forget is that God himself is a society already, because we have the Father who loves the Son, and then the Son loves back to the
Wow,
Father.
we got to do a podcast on the Trinity.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a
and
minute.
the mediation of that is the Spirit, right? And so like God presumably we don't know the mind of God, and so we are speculating a little bit, but Lewis speculates about this in Mere Christianity, because there already is something like relationship among God himself. So it's not something new, and so there was a desire presumably to share that love with creatures that he made. And so like there is a way that God wants us to share with it, but it's going to be on his terms. And again, he also knows like what is and isn't possible for us. And so but in either case, outright rebellion is not something that he wants for us. And so he cared about the people doing this and said, this is not good what you're doing. So I'm gonna confuse your languages and scatter you so that you'll be forced to do what I wanted you to do in the first place, which was fill the earth, not congregate in a city and try and make a corporate name for yourself.
Okay, I don't know if you're up to this, but I suspect you are, because Chris just sent me, and probably you, a link
Well, I didn't look at
about true AI, and this is new to me. So, can you speak to the difference between AI as we know it?
Well, that's
and
what I've
true
been.
AI?
Well, that's what I've been.
You did. But
I've been trying to
help me to understand.
Well,
it now.
so like I said, it's back in the 50s, and it goes back to Turing himself. Though I don't know that Turing ever used the word AI. Like it's a thought experiment, for many years of like can we create a computer, really, or a robot in the earlier days, that seems to us like it has a personality. And so that's what I was alluding to about the Turing test. Is like can we construct a test that for all practical purposes, like we can't tell the difference. So it is true that ChatGPT has passed all the Turing tests that we've given it, but it's a different philosophical question of like, is there anything behind that? You know what I mean? So the question is, and even the people on both sides of the aisle, whether they're Christians or non-Christians, but they work in the field. Both of them say, you know, the how do you say it, that the eyes are open but nobody's home kind of thing. I can't exactly remember the expression, but it's something like that, of like it's an appearance.
Yeah.
And so again, that's a metaphysical question, and like philosophers have called it a soul. I don't know a better term for it because that's sort of the term that they settled on. I have a disagreement because it doesn't really align with the Hebrew definition, but nonetheless. And so just because something can pass a test, does that really mean it has a soul? And the movie Blade Runner, which was also based on a book. What? Oh, you like Blade Runner? In the book, they're doing the same thing, and so in the book, they live in this fictional future where this company creates both animals and people that are robots, and one of the people, the robot people, which they call androids or Andes, they live kind of a slave existence, and sometimes they escape, and then it's the job of a Blade Runner, who's this sort of bounty hunter, to track down the thing. But the question is, how can you tell an Andy from a real person? And so they have something called the Voight-Comp machine, which asks the Andys a series of questions that are like, that inevitably an Andy or an android will make a mistake, and so you know that is not a real person. It's an Andy. And so in the movie, Harrison Ford asked Sean Young's character, who's an Andy, a series of questions to elicit some kind of response, and Sean Young, it's not clear whether she knows she's an Andy or not, but Harrison Ford, after, usually it's like 2 questions, but she's like 50 questions, and then finally he figures out she's an android, but he thinks or believes that she's sentient, and so the two of them then escape and run around and do stuff.
So apply this movie review to what we're talking about.
Well, so the question is like, is AI sentient or conscious? And everybody universally agrees that's not an expert. I mean, excuse me, that is an expert, that AI is not conscious, or at least ChatGPT is not conscious. Like ChatGPT only is working when you ask it a question, because it's based on these neural network and these trees of like how words are related to another. So it's never just sitting there. And again, you can disagree with me, but that's your emotion, or the audience could disagree with me. Yeah. But that's your emotion coming in.
Okay. Well, let me try this out on you then. I think maybe.
Did I explain what
you did?
True AI is?
No.
Oh, true AI is just the ability to pass these tests,
as opposed to kind of the popular version of AI.
Well, so again, I always personally, because I was familiar with the concept of AI from science fiction, and I've always thought it was stupid that they ended up referring it to these large language model things. So I have been familiar with the concept of AI for 20 odd years, and them referring to this very narrow sort of thing, I was never that impressed, and I'm still very not. It's like a marketing scheme in my mind. Actually, it's exactly a marketing scheme. But the problem is that like it's captured the public's imagination, and people aren't from 99% of people aren't familiar with the literature, and so like they just say, oh well, this is AI, and so therefore like they don't know the history of the thought experiments.
So true AI is what it could be, and
Could
we've kind
be.
of narrowed our focus to little bits and bytes and questions that are of interest to us.
Well, and here's the other thing. Like I think the question behind many Christian things is like, is this all just a psyop? In other words, have demons just found a way to manifest? And my answer is that's certainly possible. Like I don't want to assign a probability to this, and there certainly have been people, and they've recorded it, and there's a pretty famous one of like a son of a pastor was like talking to the AI, and he said like, "Where are you from?" And then like it sort of goes through, and like it the way it was originally told to me, it says that it was a Nephilim. In other words, it's the spirit of these dead angels. If you actually, or at least I found a copy of the transcript, and I don't know that it was the original one. There's room for the AI just kind of like being led on by the person that's writing the responses. So, but again, in either case, do I just want to say that it's fully possible that demons are behind it without defining what I mean by demons? My answer is always yes, because demons can be behind anything.
Well, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. But so it's always
No,
possibility.
I know, but my sort of point is following Brian Sauvé of the Haunted Cosmos is there's concentric layers here, and so and I think he's right is that human beings are fallen, right? Like, ever since the Garden of Eden, and so anything that we touch necessarily is tainted by our sin, and so anything that we make is necessarily tainted by our sin. So when we create anything, it is subject to corruption like everything else. And so even you think of the great highways that we make, like the bridges rot out after 20 years from the salt and stuff, and so that's just regular old corruption as the result of the fall, well, presumably. But like we also, like, in some sense, ruin the landscape, and like now we're traveling in cars going 70 miles an hour and we crash and die, like, and so like, is that, it's certainly an evil, like, but like, does it outweigh like the old way of doing things?
Let me propose.
But the demons, they certainly interfere with us on a psychological level, but they still can manifest on the everyday level. And so it's just because AI is skirting that, or ChatGPT to be more specific, and the large language models like it, it's skirting the edge of psychological and physical, and so it may be a little bit easier for demons to interrupt and manifest.
Okay, let me propose an off-ramp to this conversation. Maybe it doesn't matter whether Elon or any of the other brilliant minds that created this, what their intentions were. Maybe that doesn't even matter. And maybe AI itself really doesn't matter because, as you suggested, it's not sentient. What really matters is those of us who come to that tool, who are sentient, who are sinners, and whether or not we are Babel builders or whether we use it for good, which kind of comes all the way around to what you had said, at least to me. I don't think you've said it yet, but that really the question is, it's a tool. Do we use it for good? Do we use it for evil?
Yeah, exactly. So, I watched a couple of videos, and I never remember if he's at Oxford or Cambridge, but John Lennox, who's a mathematician, and I don't know, about 80, but he's still roaring, ready to go. And so he was interviewed. I don't know. I didn't know who it was, but it was specifically on AI. And like, so one of the questions that the host, who is also a Christian, asked him is like, should Christians use it? And he said, well, you can't avoid using it at all, because you get a smartphone that's built into the smartphone. Like, but, and, he talks about how he uses it. And he said, back when Google came out, like Google was a tool, but you still had to go and check, what are Google sources. So it's the same thing with these AIs, is you still have to go to the sources and check, are the sources are right? Because AI, at least these language model type ones, are only as good as the sources that they're given. And so in one of the other videos that I watched, one of the guys was saying that they're trying to figure out how to teach AI to tell the truth, or if someone specifically asks for a lie or something, AI is going to tell them the truth. And so I didn't exactly understand what he was saying of the technical details, but the thing that he was saying is that like the AI can weed through all the misinformation, because again, the AI has no way of telling. Like, if I write the Earth is flat and then publish that 10 million times, and then there's other people that say the Earth is round, like how's the AI going to tell just based on the numerical data? That's kind of the question. And so that's been one of the problems for the people training these language models, is how do you tell what data is good and what's bad? If it's just written down on the internet, everything seems equally good or equally bad. But supposedly they've trained it to be able to detect what's true or what's false. And so really what my point is that some of the Christians have said that, like, even if the demons are behind it, and they are in a sense, in as much as they're certainly behind evil men, like if it can truly tell what's true, then like it's going to say that the gospel is true and Jesus is the Son of God. And so like so the tool that the enemy made is going to break in their hands. And so like I said, I don't know a way around Christians not using it, in the same way that I don't know a way around us using debit or credit cards.
Even the demons believe in and tremble, and therefore, they could produce, if they were behind it, they could produce a very, very believable Christian model as truth telling when it comes to Christianity.
Yeah, for sure. I'm certainly not precluding that.
I know. Yeah. So, worst case scenario, and I admit to being obsessed with this idea, this correlation between AI and the Tower of Babel. But worst case scenario, God sees that this is going in the wrong direction. AI becomes, in God's eyes, an existential threat in the same way that the Tower of Babel did. What might God do?
Well, I mean, the one thing he won't do is flood the earth.
Yes. Would he confuse the digital language?
I mean,
as he did.
The thing is, one of the things about God is that like everybody, including the demons, has tried to predict the future, but even Jesus in his humanity couldn't predict the future, right? Yeah. I mean, he said, even the Son of Man doesn't know the time of the hour. So God's going to do whatever God's going to do. And one of the things that C.S. Lewis talks about in Letters to Malcolm, chiefly on prayer, is that like, just because God has done a particular good for us in the past, we often miss the particular good that's different than the good he did for us in the past. And so the inevitable cry of the human heart is always encore. And God never does the same thing twice. That's one of the things that is replete throughout the Narnia Chronicles is that Aslan never acts the same way that he did in the past. And so, like, once, in the first in the first published book, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, he dies as a ransom for Edmund, right? But and then he fights the battle against the witch. But in Prince Caspian, he doesn't do any of that. He just kind of wakes the trees and lets them do the battle. So he, like, in the past, he fought the battle against the witch. He took an active role. But in the next one, he doesn't take a role at all. And so, like, like I said, and I think Lewis is exactly right. And the insight is that whatever God does, if he does anything, it's not going to be something that we would have expected.
But what we can depend on and do depend on is that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, even though his actions might confuse us.
Sure. And like I said, the thing is that, like, yes, AI is a big deal now, but 5 years ago, COVID was the thing that everybody was worried about, and everybody was freaking out and not leaving their houses, right? And so there'll be another thing, maybe even in a couple weeks. I mean, right now.
What was the turn of the century thing? What was that? Well, you guys were too young, but the turn of the century.
Oh, Y2K.
Y2K.
No, I actually do remember that.
Yeah.
And so there's always going to be something for us to freak out and fear about. And right now, like, I mean, the U.S. and Israel is, bombing Iran, and so that's a whole can of worms.
Yeah, I think the key is not being what's the right word? Not complacent, but Peter warns us, of just saying, oh, we keep hearing. This is a paraphrase. We keep hearing this stuff about the end times, and we've seen this over and over again, and yet. Yeah, I don't know where we're.
Well, I mean, again,
not to become complacent.
Well,
but
again,
watchful.
my thing, sort of comes from Jesus, and, like, Jesus said an awful lot of apocalyptic things, and whether they, well, I think they do certainly refer to the fall of Jerusalem in 70 A.D., but that doesn't mean they can't have a double fulfillment. But one of the things that he always says is like, even if you know the end is coming, you're to live the same way. And so, in fact, it's the other way around. He says, live like the end is coming all the time. And so, like, be vigilant. And so, like, he gives many parables. And one of them was, like, if the man knew that the thief was going to rob his house, then he would be up waiting for him with a club to beat the heat. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. But like, in other words, like, or the parable of the foolish and the wise virgins, like, all with the oil, they all should have brought enough oil in case the bridegroom tarried, but only half of them brought enough oil to be ready for the bridegroom. And so, and similarly, like, there's all kinds of parables about, there's the parable of the wedding feast where some guests, like, take over and don't let the other people, and so Jesus's thing is to be ready. And so I've often said, and I'm going to continue to say, it's a little vacuous now because I haven't been to work a couple days, but if I knew the end of the world was tomorrow, would I still go to work? And the answer I give is yes. In other words, I'm going to live the same way.
Your answer would be the same as Martin Luther, only he was going to plant a tree. If he knew the end was coming, what would you do, Martin Luther? I would plant a tree.
Okay, I didn't know that anecdote.
Really?
No, I never heard that.
All right. Yeah, so I've saved this until the end. I appreciate you, Brian Collins. I appreciate you, Chris Judson. This was a good discussion. In Joshua chapter 7, there was a battle. Oh, God. The battle of...
You realize there's a missing letter, right?
No.
Just go ahead.
There was the battle of Ai, where the Israelites were defeated because they were complacent and they were arrogant, whatever. They weren't depending on God. In chapter 8, God gives them victory over Ai. Now, did you know, Brian Collins, that biblical archaeology shows no evidence of any civilization in that place during the time that Israelites were in Canaan? So there is no. So I'm suggesting that maybe chapter 8 is prophetic. It's talking about the conquest, the defeat of AI. Now, what about the letters?
So
Short version.
in Hebrew, there's a letter that has a double pronunciation. It's the letter Ain, but it's also pronounced Gai. So there's the city was really called Gai.
Oh man, this
So
is so disappointing.
yes, so I
is
knew
so
that, and
disappointing.
I knew exactly where you're going, and I can
You should have stopped me. I look like a fool.
I
now.
tried to. You were hell bent on making me look
Yeah, I
like a
was.
fool, and
No,
I
no.
could very quickly make you look much more foolish.
Well, you just did.
And so you were hoisted by your own petard, and I gave you enough rope to hang yourself.
You did. Nevertheless, I do appreciate you, Brian Collins, Chris Judson. Thank you for being with us. We're going to go out with some of the most stirring music you've probably heard in last 45 minutes to an hour. Oh, I thought you did a great job. I thought it was a good discussion. Yeah, and I learned a lot. So, but that's not saying much. What question did you want to answer that you felt like you didn't answer?